Have you ever realized that money usually doesn't vanish because of major expenses, but because of the small, everyday purchases that barely get noticed? It often slips away through simple things like meals that seem insignificant at the time. You head to the grocery store planning to pick up only a few basics, yet by the time you're done, the receipt is somehow much longer than you expected. And it's not because you were starving, it's because the system is designed that way. Supermarkets aren't just selling food, they're selling feelings. They promote convenience, better taste, and the idea that you should add just a little more. That extra item, repeated week after week, slowly chips away at the budgets of countless households without them even realizing it. This video isn't about eating badly or depriving yourself in extreme ways. It's not encouraging you to live uncomfortably or cut everything to the minimum. Instead, it focuses on something much simpler: identifying 15 essential items that can genuinely support a well-balanced life for an entire month. If these 15 items are already in your home, you'll be far less likely to feel stressed when the month ends sooner than expected. You won't find yourself shopping out of anxiety, and you'll stop feeling like your money mysteriously disappears. Stay with this video until the end, not just to remember a list, but to rethink how you approach your everyday meals and spending habits. Let's get started. 1. Rice. The item that helps you stay steady when your finances begin to feel tight. When money starts running low, hunger usually isn't the first problem people notice. What shows up first is a feeling of stress or discomfort. Every time you open the kitchen cupboard, you start scanning the shelves and wondering, what if things get a bit worse tomorrow? That thought alone can create pressure. In moments like that, what truly matters isn't trendy ingredients or perfectly balanced meals. What you really need is something dependable, something that feels stable. Rice plays that role. Simply knowing you have rice stored at home can bring a sense of relief and help your thoughts settle down. With that reassurance, you're less likely to make impulsive purchases. You won't feel the urge to grab items just because they seem useful in the moment, only to realize later they quietly stretched your budget. Rice gives you breathing room, and during challenging times, having extra time and flexibility is incredibly valuable. It doesn't require refrigeration, it lasts a long time without spoiling, and it's easy to prepare. A straightforward meal made with rice can feel far more comforting than something expensive that still leaves you unsatisfied. Rice won't make you wealthy, but it can help you avoid losing money faster than necessary. When your budget starts to tighten, the priority isn't luxury food, it's peace of mind. If you had to pick just one item to keep your kitchen feeling secure and calm, would you choose rice or something different? And what would your reason be? 2. Affordable seasonal fruit. Ask yourself, do you reach for snacks because your body truly needs food, or because nothing better is available? Take a moment to think about the last time you ate candy or something sweet. Were you genuinely hungry, or was it simply within arm's reach, easy to grab, requiring no decision at all? In most cases, snacking doesn't begin with physical hunger. It starts with convenience and availability. That's why inexpensive seasonal fruit can be such a simple but powerful way to interrupt the habit. When your kitchen regularly contains bananas, apples, or other familiar fruits, you don't have to force yourself to eat healthier. You just naturally choose what's already there. Fruit is light, easy to digest, and not heavy on the stomach. It's especially helpful for older adults or for evenings when you don't feel like preparing a full meal, but still want something to avoid going to bed hungry. Even something as simple as an apple in the afternoon can prevent a whole series of unnecessary choices, like grabbing sweets or sugary drinks, and the regret that sometimes follows afterward. Fruit doesn't demand complicated cooking. You can eat it as it is, blend it into a smoothie, or keep it as a quick evening option. It's affordable, easy to find, and doesn't require much planning or effort. Sometimes, improving your spending habits isn't about strict self-control. It's about setting up your environment so the better choice is the easiest one. So again, do you snack because you're truly hungry, or because there's nothing suitable waiting at home? I remember one comment that stood out to me. Someone said they stopped eating candy simply by keeping bananas and apples in the house all the time. Not because fruit is extraordinary, but because it offers a better alternative at the exact moment it's needed. 3. Quality olive oil. Small in size, but It influences the entire household. Cooking oil isn't something you usually eat on its own, yet it plays a role in almost every meal you prepare. Because it's used so often, it quietly shapes the outcome of your food, whether it leaves you feeling satisfied and energized or sluggish afterward. Olive oil doesn't require large quantities. A small amount is enough for sautéing vegetables, cooking onions, or adding to soups. It may not turn an ordinary dish into something fancy, but it's a sensible option, especially when considering heart health. It can also help you avoid depending on lower quality oils that may seem harmless at first, but can become a concern with frequent use. A single good bottle can last for quite a while. In many cases, simply choosing a better cooking oil is one of the easiest ways to improve your meals without changing anything else in your kitchen. So what type of oil do you currently use at home? And if you had the chance to change just one item in your kitchen, would you consider replacing the cooking oil? Or would you choose something else instead? 4. Salt. The boundary between food and giving up. You can handle mild hunger. You can even manage a few days of plain meals. But once salt is missing, something becomes clear very quickly. The human body simply isn't meant to function without it. Salt doesn't make food exciting or overly flavorful. Its role is much more basic. It makes meals workable. It allows ingredients to come together in a way that feels complete. Without salt, the food is still physically present, but your body starts to reject it in subtle ways. The reaction isn't intense hunger. Instead, it shows up as low energy, lack of interest, or the urge to skip meals altogether. And when skipping meals becomes routine, everything else in daily life begins to decline faster than expected. Salt may be small, but it creates a clear dividing line. With it, you can comfortably eat rice, beans, vegetables, and eggs. Without it, even simple foods slowly feel unappealing and difficult to enjoy. Often, people don't stop eating because there is no food available. They lose motivation because something essential that gives food purpose is missing. One important reason salt is overlooked is its low cost. Because it's so inexpensive, people tend to treat it as unimportant. It doesn't need refrigeration, it doesn't spoil, and you don't have to buy it frequently. Yet precisely because it seems so ordinary, its absence becomes noticeable. Salt is one of the few basic items required to maintain a stable daily routine. Not necessarily a luxurious lifestyle, but simply a life that can continue normally. Without salt, people don't immediately face severe consequences, but their overall routine can weaken quickly. It's not something that needs to be used in large amounts, just enough to do its job. Still, its presence cannot really be replaced. When considering the 15 essential items for monthly preparation, salt isn't optional. It's the foundation that allows all the other choices to function properly. 5. Eggs. The food that helps on days when your energy is gone. There are times when you're not actually very hungry, you're simply exhausted. On those days, even deciding what to cook feels overwhelming. You don't want to spend a long time in the kitchen, and you definitely don't want to spend extra money on something complicated. That's exactly when eggs prove how practical they are. An egg doesn't require preparation or special skills. There's no need for planning ahead or advanced techniques. You can boil it, and it's ready. You can fry it, and the meal comes together quickly. Add it to a bowl of hot rice or drop it into soup, and suddenly the dish feels more substantial and complete. Eggs may not turn a meal into something extravagant, but they do make it feel finished and satisfying. Just as importantly, they are easy on the body. After eating them, you're unlikely to feel overly full, sluggish, or in search of more food right away. For older adults in particular, eggs are a reliable choice. They provide quality protein, are generally easy to digest, and don't put much strain on the digestive system. A simple egg-based meal often leaves you feeling calm and satisfied rather than regretting what you spent or feeling physically drained. Eggs also offer a practical lesson about budgeting. Meals don't have to be complex or expensive to be valuable. Sometimes choosing something simple at the right moment prevents a series of unnecessary expenses later on. When eggs are available at home, it's easier to avoid frequent takeout orders, skip impulse purchases, and reduce that feeling that something is missing. One egg won't transform your entire life, but on the right day, In the right situation, it can keep small problems from growing larger. That's why eggs consistently appear on any list of essential, steady staples for everyday living. 6. Dried beans, the food that reduces reliance on meat. There comes a moment when you realize you don't actually need as much meat as you once believed. That shift isn't necessarily about finances alone. Sometimes it's simply that both your body and your budget feel overworked. Dried beans fit naturally into that stage of change. They aren't flashy, and they don't offer instant excitement with the first bite. However, once you eat them, they provide a deep and steady sense of satisfaction. With beans in your meals, you're less likely to snack unnecessarily, experience random cravings, or wander into the kitchen late at night because dinner didn't feel complete. They may work gradually, but their effect is consistent and reliable. Unlike many foods that cause quick spikes in energy followed by a drop, beans offer a more stable feeling of fullness that lasts longer and feels balanced. When beans become a regular part of your diet, something important shifts. You're no longer constantly influenced by the price of meat. Meals feel simpler and less financially pressured. You don't have to think every day about how to meet your protein needs. Beans also provide a quiet sense of independence. When you keep them at home, you're not forced to buy additional meat just to feel prepared. You eat because you genuinely need nourishment, not because you're worried about running out later. Dried beans aren't included on this list merely because they are inexpensive. They are here because they support a stable, low-stress way of eating, helping you live well without unnecessary pressure. 7. Canned tomatoes, the ingredient that turns food into a real meal. There's a common situation many people recognize. You open the cupboard and see a few random ingredients. Some rice, a little beans, maybe small leftovers of meat. And you pause, unsure whether that combination is enough to create something that feels like a proper meal. It's exactly in these moments that canned tomatoes prove their value and earn their reputation as the heart of the kitchen. A satisfying dish usually needs a few key elements. It needs moisture so the food doesn't become dry. It needs a touch of acidity to balance the flavors. And it needs something that helps everything blend together into one unified dish. Canned tomatoes naturally provide all of that in a single item. They don't require special storage conditions, they aren't dependent on the season, and they don't require advanced cooking experience. You simply open the can and they're ready to use. They have a unique ability to bring ingredients together. With canned tomatoes, plain rice turns into sauced rice. Simple noodles become a complete dish. Beans and small pieces of meat transform into a hearty stew with more depth and character. When tomatoes are added, separate ingredients start working in harmony, and the meal no longer feels like a collection of leftovers. During challenging periods, people don't just want to feel full. They want to maintain a sense of normalcy, to feel that life is still moving in a familiar, steady rhythm. A pot of soup or a pan of simmering tomato sauce on the stove can create exactly that feeling. It gives reassurance that things haven't fallen apart. One comment captures this idea well. Someone said that as long as they have canned tomatoes, their home can still cook, even if other supplies run low. That isn't an exaggeration. With canned tomatoes in the pantry, the kitchen remains functional and flexible. They may not make meals feel fancy or luxurious, but they do keep food organized, balanced, and complete, truly worthy of being called a meal. 8. Frozen vegetables, saving money by preventing waste. Most people buy fresh vegetables with good intentions. But a few days later, it's a familiar story. You open the fridge and find them wilted, soft, or forgotten because you were busy. And honestly, the worst part isn't even the food itself going bad. It's that uncomfortable feeling that money has been wasted again. Frozen vegetables exist to solve exactly that problem. They bring reliability into your kitchen. When you need them, they are still there. No pressure to cook everything immediately. No fear that they'll spoil if you don't use them today. There's no forcing yourself to eat just to avoid throwing things away. You simply take what you need, open the bag, and add it straight into a pan, a soup, or mix it with rice or noodles. It's quick, simple, and already done in minutes. In a time when food prices feel higher than ever, avoiding waste becomes a small but meaningful win. Frozen vegetables don't make meals feel more luxurious, but they do make your kitchen far more stable and predictable. So what do you usually reach for? broccoli, mixed vegetable blends, spinach, or peas? And how do you typically use them in your meals? 9. Pork, the ingredient that keeps meals stable when prices change. Have you ever noticed how pork becomes the most talked about meat whenever food prices start to shift? It's not because it's considered a luxury item, but because it plays a central role in the daily meals of millions of households. In fact, a large share of the meat people eat at home, often more than 60%, comes from pork rather than beef or seafood. The reason is straightforward. It's affordable enough to buy regularly and familiar enough that you don't need to overthink how to cook it. A single kilogram of pork can stretch surprisingly far. Depending on how it's prepared, whether minced, stewed, stir-fried, or added to soups, it can easily cover 5 to 7 separate meals. When minced, even around 100 to 120 grams can provide enough protein for one adult meal. This means you don't need large quantities to feel satisfied, and you don't need to spend excessively to feel secure. That flexibility is exactly what helps keep household food budgets from being disrupted week after week. Pork is also one of the most practical meats to work with. It's suitable for both quick meals and slow-cooked dishes. It can be frozen for 2 to 3 months without a major loss in quality, and it doesn't require complicated seasoning to taste good. When you're tired, it can be cooked quickly in a pan. When you have more time, it can be simmered slowly. When you need to save money, it can be stretched further by combining it with beans or vegetables. One ingredient, many different possibilities depending on your situation. Perhaps the most important part is its familiarity. During uncertain times, people don't just want to feel full. They want life to feel normal. A meal that includes pork often provides exactly that sense of normalcy. Not excess, not luxury, just stability. And in many cases, that stability matters more than anything fancy on the table. Pork may not be a perfect solution, but in terms of affordability, versatility, and portion control, it remains one of the most practical ways to keep everyday meals from getting out of balance. 10. Garlic, the smallest kitchen staple that quietly shapes everything. Some ingredients are used constantly, yet almost never get noticed. Garlic is a perfect example of that. You don't really eat garlic on its own, but almost every proper cooked meal somehow passes through it. And when it's missing for a few days, you don't necessarily feel hungrier, but you do notice something subtle. Food feels heavier, less lively, and it loses a kind of depth that's hard to describe directly. You only need a small amount. Usually just 1 or 2 cloves is enough for an entire dish. But even in that small quantity, its influence goes beyond taste alone. When garlic is crushed and left to rest for about 10 minutes, its natural compounds begin to activate gradually. It doesn't happen instantly or dramatically, but in a slow, steady way that becomes more noticeable over time rather than in a single meal. For older adults especially, garlic is practical and easy to include in daily cooking. There's no need to change your diet or add complicated routines. You simply continue cooking as usual, but keep garlic in the process. You can sauté it at the beginning to build flavor or add it later to preserve its stronger character. Each method has its purpose. It's inexpensive, stores well, and is rarely wasted. But its real importance goes deeper than cost or flavor. Garlic affects things you don't directly see. Subtle feelings of energy, overall comfort after meals, and longer-term balance in everyday eating habits. You don't need much of it, but when it's missing, you notice surprisingly quickly. Garlic isn't the centerpiece of a dish. It's the quiet foundation underneath everything else. And often, the most important foundations are the ones that can't really be replaced. 11. Chicken, the long-term thinker's protein choice. When you begin planning meals for an entire month instead of just a few days, chicken naturally stands out as a practical option. It's affordable enough to buy regularly, yet versatile enough that it doesn't become repetitive or boring. A single whole chicken can easily be turned into 3 or even 4 separate meals if you portion it wisely. You can boil it, stir-fry it, stew it, or shred it. Almost every cooking method works. But its real value is often overlooked. The bones. If you simmer the bones, they turn into a rich broth that can be used as a base for soups, porridge, or noodles over several days. Nothing is wasted, and every part contributes to future meals. For people over 50, Shredded chicken added to soup or porridge is especially practical. It's light on the stomach, easy to digest, and still feels like a complete, satisfying meal without requiring complicated preparation. There's also a simple but interesting observation many people make. One person once said that after they started buying whole chickens instead of separate cuts, they stopped using seasoning powder altogether. The idea was simple. When the ingredients are good enough, there's less need to rely on artificial flavoring to fix the taste. So what about your household? Do you usually buy whole chickens, or do you prefer specific cuts like thighs or breasts? And typically, how many meals do you manage to stretch from one chicken? 12. Potatoes. The food that quiets constant cravings. Have you ever finished a meal and just an hour later found yourself looking for something else to eat again? That doesn't always mean real hunger. More often, it's the body failing to register that it has actually had enough. Potatoes occupy a very interesting place here. For one simple reason, they tend to create a stronger feeling of fullness than many other everyday carbohydrates. In sanity research, they often rank higher than bread, noodles, and even rice. Not because they are packed with energy, but because they help the stomach and the brain come to the same conclusion. This is enough. No need for more. That's something many modern meals fail to provide. Potatoes are also extremely simple to prepare. You can boil them and eat them directly. You can roast them until they're satisfying on their own. You can stew them with beans and vegetables and turn them into a dish that lasts multiple meals. Cut into chunks and added to soup, they thicken the broth and give it substance, turning something light into a proper filling meal instead of just a quick snack. Their real strength is that they reduce the urge to snack without you having to actively fight against it. When your main meal is filling enough, the brain naturally stops pushing you toward cookies, candy, or random bites throughout the day. And when those extra snacks disappear, spending tends to drop as well, though in a positive way. Potatoes combined with beans and vegetables can even create a full meal for under $1. But the real value isn't the cost. It's the fact that you don't feel the need to eat again shortly afterward in the evening. One comment captures it very directly. Someone said they stopped snacking the moment they began eating mostly potatoes and eggs. Potatoes won't make you wealthy, but they can quiet false hunger and reduce constant cravings. And for many people, that alone is a significant change. 13. Dry pasta. The meal for when you've run out of mental energy. There are evenings when you're not truly hungry. You're just exhausted. Not physically exhausted in a dramatic way, but mentally drained from making decisions all day long. Work, money, family, bills, everything stacking up at once. At that point, standing in front of the kitchen isn't about choosing something delicious. It's about avoiding another difficult decision. Dry pasta fits exactly into that kind of moment. It doesn't ask what you're in the mood for. It doesn't require planning or creativity. It simply needs boiling water, and about 8 to 10 minutes later, it's ready to eat. No cooking skill, no special effort, no need to get anything just right. You boil it, and it works. From there, you can keep it simple. Mix it with canned tomatoes, a bit of oil, some salt, and if you have them, add onion or garlic. That's it. A complete meal in the most straightforward form. But the real value of dry pasta isn't just that it's cheap or easy. It's that it reduces mental load. It frees your mind at a time when even small decisions feel heavy. When money is tight toward the end of the month, even basic spending choices can feel stressful. A simple pack of pasta removes that pressure for at least one meal. And that matters more than it seems, because when your mind gets a break, you're less likely to spiral into poor decisions afterward. A pack of pasta often costs less than a cup of coffee, yet it gives you something coffee doesn't: a full, proper meal. Something warm, filling, and without the feeling of regret afterward. You finish eating and feel like, even if the day wasn't perfect, you still stayed in control. Dry pasta isn't something people usually feel proud of. But on difficult days, it helps you get through without falling apart. And sometimes, that's more than enough. 14. Canned tuna. The ingredient you rarely want to use but always want to have. There are days when cooking simply doesn't feel possible. Not because of laziness, but because your energy for managing anything at all has run out. The fridge is nearly empty, the stove stays cold, and even the idea of going out to buy groceries feels exhausting. Canned tuna is made for exactly those moments. There's no cooking required, no pot, and no decision-making. You just open the can, and within a minute you already have a source of protein ready to eat, whether with rice, pasta, or bread. It's not something luxurious or exciting, but it is enough to keep your body going without extra effort. That's where its real value lies. It steps in when you no longer have the energy to cook at all. It also has another quiet advantage: shelf life. Canned tuna can sit in a cupboard for 1 to 3 years without needing any attention. You don't buy it for immediate use. You keep it so that when an unexpected situation comes, you're not left without options. And this is different from panic buying or hoarding. It's calm, practical preparation. For older adults especially, canned tuna also offers simple portion control. One can typically contains around 20 to 25 grams of protein, which is enough for a light meal without feeling excessive. No complicated seasoning is needed, and there's no worry about overthinking how much to eat. Tuna isn't the kind of food people proudly talk about, but on the right day, when everything else feels too difficult, it becomes exactly what you need. And sometimes just knowing there is a backup option waiting in the cabinet is enough to reduce stress on its own. 15. Onions. The ingredient that gives food its soul. You can cook plenty of meals and still end up with something that feels flat and forgettable. Not necessarily because you didn't use meat or enough ingredients, but because the dish is missing a proper flavor foundation. That foundation is onions. When you gently sauté them and let their aroma spread through the pan, something changes immediately. The whole dish starts to come alive. Meat tastes less dry, soups gain depth, and even plain rice feels less repetitive and dull. Onions don't require much effort or quantity. One onion can quietly move through several meals without ever feeling repetitive or wasted. They are inexpensive, store well, and are rarely thrown away. Without onions, food still exists. But with them, food becomes something you actually want to eat. They don't turn meals into something luxurious, but they do make simple food noticeably more enjoyable and satisfying. In a budget-conscious kitchen, they're not something to cut out. They're something to rely on. Because you don't need to eat badly in order to save money. You just need to choose the right basics. These 15 items won't make anyone rich. But without them, money tends to disappear without a clear reason. Grocery stores profit from distraction. You protect your money through simplicity and structure. And now, one final question. If you could only choose 15 items next month, which one would be the hardest for you to give up? If this video helped you see everyday meals differently, leave a like and subscribe so that over time your money stays where it belongs.